The feminist choice, religious zealotry, or fair family court laws. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and for the past number of months, I have been pondering the notion about the greater problems in civilization in the West in general, and the fundamental conflict between the left and the right. In a lot of ways, I think perhaps the main theme that is going on in terms of conflict between conservatives and left leaning people has not to do with communism versus Nazism, like some people would say, or even authoritarianism versus libertarianism, or whatever. Really, what I think might be going on is rather simple, if you just call a spade a spade. That is the fact that the birth rates in many, if not most, Western nations is no longer producing enough of a population to sustain civilization. In many nations, like France, Canada, Japan, and I believe maybe even the United States, couples on average are having less than 2 children, which people predict will lead to several problems in a generation or two, as people are living longer and longer, and therefore there will be less able-bodied people to take care of the elderly as they age. That said, it seems like there are two schools of thought regarding the solution to this problem, and these solutions largely seem to demand that people adopt an entire worldview to go along with them. On the one hand, we have the conservative solution, which seems to be this: a focus on traditionalism, Christian values, and family planning. Under this societal framework, abortion access would be limited or illegal, divorce would probably become stigmatized, and things like homosexuality and transgenderism might become frowned upon. This solution to the problem wouldn't be what many people want, of course, including probably many conservative individuals themselves that aren't actually the good Christians that they might pretend to be, but it would get the job done, as societies with prohibition on abortion and stigmas around not being in nuclear families tend to produce a lot of children. Then, on the other hand, we seem to have the other paradigm, which is proposed, or maybe it's better to say imposed by the left, which would be that of solving the problem with immigration from basically anywhere that people want to come from, which largely ends up being Islamic nations because people often don't like living in them. So they come to the West. Granted, I haven't actually looked at the numbers of how many people are moving into Western nations from Islamic countries, but we can assume it's rather significant because everybody is always talking about it, and also because it has become taboo in leftist circles to criticize Islam. Meanwhile, there are numerous mostly Christian nations that people probably immigrate from, like places in Central and South America, but nobody ever says that we aren't allowed to insult the religion of these types of devout Catholics. That said, the one thing that seems rather clear to me is that either of the proposed solutions to the problem of declining populations in Western nations would end up leading to growing amounts of religious zealotry. On the one hand, we could self-impose Christian zealotry in our nations if we let the conservatives have their way, which would have the side effect of increasing birth rates, at least for a while. And on the other hand, we could just let a bunch of people into Western nations, many of whom would be religious, and more likely than not, we'd end up with a growing presence of Islamic zealotry in many or most Western nations, the way that we've already seen in various nations in Europe for some time. That all said, obviously, neither solution seems particularly appealing to me as an individual, and while there is a definite possibility that these are the only two solutions that anybody will ever choose, I do have a third solution to propose. That is, Instead of renewing our faith in old religions as a way to keep the population levels afloat, why don't we instead try to dismantle the most prominent systemic ideology that is in the law and focus our efforts on the family court system and reforming it, which, due to feminism, is inspiring countless people to avoid marriage or making babies at all. I'll spare you the details because I have a feeling that most people who watch my channel are already aware of them regarding just how heinous the family court system really is and how many people, males especially, are choosing to willingly opt out of marriage, fatherhood, or even relationships with women at all. MGTOWs, of course, exist. Well, I am not sure about this because I don't think any widespread studies have been conducted. I can only assume that there's a lot of young men out there that would like to marry and have families, but have been warned by older men or the internet not to marry or impregnate a woman due to how badly they'll get screwed in the courts. From my vantage point, there is a distinct possibility that one of the main reasons that the population is on the decline has to do with the fact that the laws are so biased in favor of women in the West, and men simply don't want to risk starting a family. So why not try changing that and see what happens? Let's make the family court system more fair to avoid growing religious zealotry in the West. Now, I know perfectly well that the feminist lobby groups would never consider giving fathers equal access to custody after divorce, fair settlements among shared assets, or changing things like the Duluth model of domestic violence laws, which make it so that women can violently attack their male partners only to get him arrested for his troubles if anybody calls the police. Feminists don't want all of that to change, which is probably why they are willing to advocate for endless Islamic immigration into the countries they have a stranglehold on, like Sweden and Germany. But we can hope that it will be possible to make these changes if people keep raising awareness and feminists keep losing power, like they have been. The only thing that makes this theory a bit complicated is that Japan apparently has a falling birth rate as well, and I don't think that they have the same type of feminist movement that we do, so I'm not sure what to say about that. But maybe somebody has more information about that subject. Ultimately, I don't know. I don't have all of the answers, but I thought it was worth posing the question in this video. If you liked it, please consider donating to me on PayPal or Patreon, links in the description. Money would be great as I can't stream and get super chats for the next 3 months due to a very unfair community strike, which I explained in a video yesterday. Have a good one.